Okay, hello and welcome everyone to the Rainbow Coaching Collective podcast. We are a collective of LGBTQIA plus transformative coaches who are set on empowering the members of the community and its allies one conversation at a time. So today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently. Usually we decide on the topic before we start recording. But today, once we got on the call, because of certain things that have been present in our lives, the topic of boundaries suddenly became very prominent and very important. So instead of going on the topic that we were planning to do, we've decided to do an ad hoc theme of boundaries this week. So we haven't planned what we're going to be saying, but we all have experience of boundaries and our experience of them being tested and what we do about them. So let's throw it open. I'm going to welcome my two amazing fellow coaches, Rachel Richards and Max Wilson.
Hi guys.
Thanks so much for being here today. It's so lovely to be here as usual. Let's throw it open. Boundaries. What's with boundaries?
Yeah.
Well, what came up for me when you were doing the introduction, sorry, was lack of them. Probably on my part. Didn't it come up for you, Max?
I was just thinking, what actually do we mean by boundaries? And because I've heard this a lot of like different analogies that people use. One that came up for me once was that someone raised was it's almost like if you imagine like a pen and you're in the pen and you choose who to open the door to, who can come in and out, but it's got that flexibility, right? So you can wander out if you want to, or you can stay in and close the door. But I've heard different variations of that, and like them being soft, sometimes that they're rigid and hard. So like, what actually we're talking about with boundaries, I guess, is a good starting point. And I don't think there's a correct answer, but I guess it's what do boundaries mean to us as individuals?
What do boundaries mean to us?
Something that I should have.
Yeah.
It's something I think that is something I didn't really know what boundaries were when I was growing up. It wasn't something that was really talked about, having boundaries. It was sometimes banded around. I think I only knew the term from geography or something. Like it wasn't an emotion, something I linked with emotions ever. And it's only as an adult, and I think even more so as a coach, that I've kind of come across the importance of healthy boundaries. And I think what that means is knowing yourself and knowing what you are prepared to do, what you want to do, and who you want to do that with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for me that is what boundaries are. And I think in the past I've set boundaries and then they've been broken and I've accepted that. And as I've got older and realised what boundaries are for, I've kind of and gone what is important to me, those boundaries are then held.
Yeah. Yeah. That really resonated with both of what you're saying there. The phrase that came up for me was like honoring of self. A boundary is honoring of self. So it's not this like physical demarcation that I talked about at the beginning of like the pen so much for me. It's more the honoring of self. And I know what that feels like to honor self and to dishonor self. And for me, that's the boundary. And it's so easy to sort of speak it, but to actually put it into practice, how do you honor self in a world where, often it feels like your needs can't be met and, the things that you want to do could upset or disappoint somebody else. So there seems to always be difficult choices that are made in the practical when it comes to honoring self. But if that self is dishonored, it's almost like a given conclusion that that's going to lead to resentment and lots of negative emotions and feelings. And that's been my journey with it, I think, is a lot of dishonoring of self. Certainly growing up, sort of hiding who I was, my sexuality, but also other parts of myself out because of shame. So not putting forward my needs, what I wanted, what I really enjoyed to do, what brought me joy, that dishonoring of self. And it led to the point where I got to where it's sort of like that self is like bursting to come out. But it also caused a lot of like mental and physical challenges. And I can't remember who said that. I can't remember if it was Oprah Winfrey or somebody else, but somebody said the whispers become screams. I think we've talked about this before as well, but it's like we get that gentle nudge. Okay, dishonor yourself, don't do that again, or be a reminder of this next time that actually this is really important to you. Okay, now you've done it again, right? Let me give you another message, a little nudge, something more powerful, and then it just gets louder and louder and louder until it like slaps you around the face. It's like you have to change this. You can't be doing this again anymore. And that's sometimes what it feels like. Yeah, it feels like the word art comes up for me. It feels like an art. It's like rather than a sort of hard science, it seems like an art, sort of very delicate juggling and holding of different things.
Yeah,
Practicing them.
absolutely. Yeah, because it would be so much easier if it was a very clear, solid gate that you could see whether it was open or closed. But I guess that comes from knowing yourself and knowing what your own boundaries are. And one of the things that that just came up for me was the practicing of saying no. I think no has a real, I mean, understandably, it has a negative connotation, but I think there is something around softening the no so that it's not personal. It doesn't mean someone hates you if they say no. It just means I think we can take things too personally sometimes. That's not a judgment, but for myself, I knew that if someone had said no to me, that would really be really painful. But that shows how unclear my own boundaries were and how my sense of self was really reliant on somebody else. But if you say no to someone, if that person has a strong sense of self, it doesn't matter to them whether you say yes or no. It just means it's a different pathway. And I think it's something around being okay with saying no to other people and to yourself, and sort of championing that it's not necessarily a hugely negative word. It's just a way of communicating that, yeah, you just want to be doing something else. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I totally agree. I think there's a lot of pressure in the sense that we say yes to a lot of things. But I think recently I was reading something when it says, if you're saying yes to all those things, what are you also saying no to? Because you don't have the time to do those other things that you really want to do, or things like that. And I think, when you were saying, I think you used the word dishonoring, which I hadn't really thought about in that sense. I've always gone for abandonment in the sense of I've abandoned myself to try and please another, or to do something else, that I've abandoned myself. And there's only so much you can abandon yourself with before you totally lose yourself. And then boundaries have completely gone because you don't even know what is you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, you really lose that sense of identity, don't you, when you've abandoned the self. It is a form of abandonment for sure, dishonoring and abandonment. That's how it's felt for me. And I think I still am going through, I think it's a life's work as opposed to a destination, that journey back to self. I definitely still feel a much stronger connection to self, but even now there's like real parts of me that are wanting to come through, and there's still now, even though I've done so much work on myself, there's like suppression mechanisms that come up and like, yeah, but you can't be too much of this, you can't be too much of that. And that's frustrating because like, but why? I just want to be. And I've had a coaching call with someone recently, and they were saying the same thing. I just want to be, and I think all of us just want to be, just want to be. But to be put all these other layers on top, and same with the setting of boundaries. That's all we do. That's all we want, right? We just want to be. We want to have our needs met. We want to do the things that we actually enjoy doing. Spend the money on the things that we want to spend on. Show up how we want to show up. And to do any of those things, we need to navigate this world of boundaries, and that can be a challenge. But there's the softening of the no. I really like that. I really like that, Holly. I read a quote recently. It was I think it says something like, your job in life is to disappoint as many people as it takes to not disappoint yourself. And obviously we don't want to disappoint anybody. We don't want to cause harm to anybody. But the reality is that every time that, like you were saying, Rach, we say yes to somebody else, when we meant no, we're saying no to ourselves. So we're disappointing ourselves. What's that doing to us? So it's that journey, isn't it? And I guess people are different levels on that spectrum of comfort with the no. I guess that's what we're getting at here, right? How comfortable can we get with the uncomfortable?
Yeah.
What
question that...
Oh, go on, Holly.
Sorry, no, go on, Rachel. So because I've got a question.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that. No, it's gone. It's gone.
Sorry.
That's fine. It's fine.
So if it comes back.
It comes back.
What I wanted to ask that I thought could be useful for people listening is, how do we know when our boundaries are crossed, left open, dishonoured?
Great question.
Yeah, I think for me, I know within, but I might even not acknowledge it. I know very much previously I might have gone, "Ow, that hurt," but that's fine. So I might have said my boundary, watch it get broken, and carried on, but kind of almost with that resentment on myself of going, "Why I didn't hold that boundary." So I think now things have shifted more, where I'm going, actually that boundary is for me, and if I look at my values, those boundaries that I put in place are protecting my values. They're protecting the core part of me, so that I can be authentic. Like you said, the boundaries aren't put in place to hurt anybody. They are to keep you safe.
Mm.
So I think for me, when they get crossed, I certainly used to would deny it and go, "It's fine. I'll just put them in place again."
Yeah.
What impact did that have on you, Rachel?
Oh, I completely lost myself because I just kept abandoning myself and then feeling really kind of frustrated. But actually, it was me that was going, "Yeah, that's fine," because I'm not following through my boundary. And I think when I come away, there was one quote that was, "I don't want to be with anyone who doesn't want to be with me." And I quite like that, because if I'm going to be me and you don't want to be with me, don't be with me. And I don't mean that just in an intimate relationship way, but in general, if I've got to really be something else and all my boundaries get broken and I lose myself, I've done that. Don't want to do that again.
Yeah. There's a lot in that. I think it's, for me, it's sort of very somatic as well, right? It's like that feeling.
Yeah.
I know you talked about the deep knowing, Rach. I think it's for me, it's like a visceral feeling. I know it. Like Holly, before we came on the call, was saying, just for benefit of the listeners, we're actually talking about something else, and setting boundaries. But you were saying, if it's not a yes, it's a no. And when we know it's not a yes if we're thinking, maybe this, maybe that. They're in that liminal space, that in between. We're trying to make it work, but it's not a definite yes. And I think that's it's a feeling, right? It feels like something off here, something off here. I'm going to try and justify my way into it rather than actually pause and check in and go, what's off? What's actually off? Let's shine a line on shite. Shite. That's funny, isn't it? That's going to make everyone laugh. Maybe it is shite as well. Let's shine a light on what it actually is here that's off, right?
Mm.
And is it is it that you don't have the money? Is it that you don't want to hang out with the person? Is it that you need some rest? Is it that you're exhausted? Is it that maybe it's a relationship decision and actually there's a lot more that needs to be in the mix? And I think, yeah, it's a very, very visceral feeling. So I think the more that we can check in with ourselves when we're in that space of setting boundaries, just being like, that's what it feels like when it's a yes. That's when it feels like when it's a no. I was on a retreat and we did an exercise. Actually, I think it's, you sort of take a breath, you put your hand over your heart and just take a few breaths. That you have a decision in mind and then you just say, heart say yes. You get a feeling in your body of what that feels like. So for a lot of people, it's like a warmth around the stomach area. And then like heart say no. And it's like a coldness. It's really, really subtle. But if you can lean into those changes, those small shifts, right? Because they're much quieter than the logic brain. So you have to really sit with the body. But they can be really good indicators of actually, what we do need. And I think often the answer is very clear. We've already arrived at the decision, but we're trying to justify our way out of it or justify our way into it. But the answer is usually pretty damn quick. It usually comes. And if it's not, that's what I was saying to you guys before the call. Or I think I've said this to you on some other occasion, but someone said to me that not making a decision is a decision in and of itself. So choosing not to make a decision is a decision. So if you're ever stuck in limbo, you've done the somatic work, and you're like, yeah, but I still don't know. I still can't make the answer. Still can't figure this out. That's okay. Don't put pressure on yourself to make the decision there and then. You can make that decision at a later date, but you've made the decision to not make the decision. That makes sense. So it gives your brain that certainty. I think that's really useful with boundaries. I often find that when I get lost in what you were saying, Ollie, with, okay, well, it's not definite yes, I don't know, yes or no. Okay, well, I'm not going to make a decision today. That's my decision. There's so much like power and control in that, which can be really useful.
Yeah. This feels like there's something around that as well, around conserving energy, because if it was the right time, you were in the right headspace, you'd be doing it. It wouldn't even, I think in a way, it's, if you have to question it, it's not a question. It's like if it was just a yes, you wouldn't even, there wouldn't be a question, would there? You would just be doing it. So if there is almost, if you have to question it, then you have to question why it's right, why you think it might be right. Because otherwise you would just be in flow and you would be taking that action. But if you're not taking that action, like you said, Max, that's an answer in itself. And I think you have to listen to that. And I think for me, as you explained, Max, like I had to kind of learn the hard way because I was so out of touch with myself at a certain point, how it manifested for me was burnout, going out and going out when I was too exhausted to go out and therefore drinking too much, for example, trying to be able to cope with things. So, another way that it could manifest is something physical. You might feel, that like at the end of the week, I know that I was always really frazzled on a Friday, but instead I would go out and drink through it when actually I should have gone home and gone to bed. So it's that kind of knowing yourself. Are you feeling burnt out? Are you feeling exhausted? And just checking in with yourself. And I sort of learned that actually, if I was questioning it and asked myself, should I do this? Yes or no? If I was like, I'm not sure, that means that's a no automatically because I'm not in the right headspace. I'm too tired to make a decision. I haven't eaten enough. I need to go and just sit down, chill, have something to eat, whatever it is. But if it was a yes, it would just be a yes. So if you are questioning it, then take some time. And that might not be that you do it today. It might not be that you mean do it ever. But yeah, it's just taking that time and know that you are allowed to take time. I think we live in such a rushed world, don't we, where it has to be like now, 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 and you have to be out all the time or doing something. It's like, well, that's actually not natural
Yeah.
to be like that.
Especially with communication, right? Friends say, right, tonight now this, or this plan now this. I have one like later in the year this. And it's quite overwhelming because you're having to decide all this on this. It can feel like you're having to decide on this all on the spot, right? But
Yeah.
we're not built for that.
Yeah, and I don't know about
Yeah.
you guys, but like, when COVID hit, life was a much slower pace because we suddenly couldn't go out, so that was off the table. We suddenly couldn't do a lot of things. So for me, it really slowed things down. And I actually was not ill in the whole time of COVID
Mm.
because I had a much slower, I mean, it had its stresses, but it was a much slower pace,
Yeah.
which obviously suited me quite well.
Yeah. 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 If I'm being honest, I can relate to that. Obviously, it was a hideous time for many people, and there was awful things that happened. But the boundary side of it for a lot of people, I think, because there wasn't so much pressure to do now, there was almost like a space that was created, so we could almost see. We're talking about technology specifically, what things could be like if we took a bit of a break and had a bit of distance and more thinking room. That's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I haven't properly reflected on that, but I think there's a lot in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Right.
Just, I mean, obviously now I'm having to take an enforced break and slow things down.
Mm.
And it's quite, to begin with, it was really frustrating. And I really then had to reset my boundaries with myself because I have to show up differently for myself now than what I did previously.
Mm.
Yeah, that
But
must be
my
really
body's
tough.
very much do not cross these boundaries. It does let me know. But then I'm in that slower space to actually hear or feel what my body's saying
Mm.
rather than, it's obviously been saying things for a while and I've just been ignoring it. Or not ignoring
Mm.
it, but going, well, I'm still okay. So
Mm.
Mm.
I think there is that real, how can we create a time in our busy lives to actually, make one of our boundaries actually is to listen to ourselves, to actually tune in. And I know you were saying, like, if it's not a yes, it's a no. And actually from a different perspective was, I was in the gym one day, it was last year, and one of the girls said to the instructor, I kind of questioned whether I should be here or not because I don't feel 100%. And he said to her, when you feel really, really ill, like you've got flu, you can't get out of bed, do you even think about coming to the gym? And she said, no. So he said, so now you're kind of questioning it. It's not a no. So he was kind of coming
Mm.
from the other bit because that's not normal. You don't normally question it when you're really ill, when you shouldn't be at the gym. It's just a given.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of the
Mm.
same thing, but from a different point of view.
Yeah. But she also took action and she did go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So she was there. So she kind of made that decision, didn't she,
yeah, yeah.
as
Yeah,
well? So it was a
that was
yes.
true.
Mm,
But yeah, that's it. It's like if you wouldn't question it, would you,
yeah.
if you weren't ready? So we're just coming towards the end of the podcast now. I just wanted to check in and see if there was anything that you wanted to share with the listeners as a key takeaway at all from today.
I think for myself, sometimes it's take away the label of boundaries because sometimes that can feel harsh, and actually just listen to yourself and what your needs are and what gives you that sense of, I don't know, peace, the sense of what your needs are, and go from that way of going, what's
Mm.
value, and working out that way rather than going, 'cause sometimes I think we need to sit and go, right, what's my boundaries? I need to come up with
Mm.
this list. It can be distracting because you're more concerned, well, what's the boundary? What's a really good boundary? But I think when you start with yourself and work, what works for me. So if I'm, I'm somebody that loves my sleep. So for me, a boundary is my phone is off at this point and I'm in bed by this point, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than going, what's my boundary? And so I've worked from that way. What's important to me outwards.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, Rachel. What nurtures and nourishes us, working the other way around.
Yeah.
Because we know what doesn't, we know how that feels. So then honoring that comes back to, I think, the check-ins. That's been a common theme, isn't it, today? Like just that checking in with self. If it's not a resonant yes, it's probably a no. If you're feeling a bit off, it's probably a no. Maybe you need a bit more time, and that's okay too. But there's that check-in with self. And I said to somebody the other day, a word that we came up with together, which is, people think that setting boundaries can be selfish, right? Asserting your needs can be selfish, but changing the language on that. How about if we use the word self-full? Yeah. What do I need to fill me up in this moment? I'm self-filling. I am nurturing and nourishing. So I'm being self-full. And that takes the other person sort of out of it. Like that, what do I need from the nourishment perspective? I was just going to say, from like bringing it back to the LGBTQIA stuff, there's a lot obviously going on at the moment, politically, and very divisive trans issues and acceptance of people and non-binary people and all the stuff. And, people are just trying to survive out there. And it's horrible. And even as an ally, I feel often burnt out trying to be an activist in the spaces that I'm in. And so God knows how it feels to be actually a trans person in the space. But I think it comes back to boundaries as well. I think, with allyship, with activism, it's really important as well to listen to your body, take the space that you need, the time that you need to regenerate, recharge, to then go back in, because I'm certainly guilty of not doing that. And you're then not that much use because your battery's on, 5-10%. And you stepping back means somebody else can step forward for a bit and you can take it in turns to recharge, metaphorically speaking, right? But we all need that moment. So just that reminder, if people need it, it's okay. It's absolutely okay to step back and recharge. It's not saying you're giving up a fight. You're not giving up the protest. You're just looking after yourself, because you can't do anything if you're not doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you both so much. Okay, well, we hope we found that useful today. I know we did. Thank you so much for both of you getting stuck into the topic and sharing your stories. Audience, if you resonate with this topic or have anything to share that we've shared with you today, and if you have any ideas on things you'd like us to talk about in the future, please visit our website, which is www.rainbowcoachingcollective.com. Or please get in touch with us via email on info@rainbowcoachingcollective.com. We would really love to hear from you. And until next time, take care, everyone.
Thank you very much, Holly. Take care.